Welcome to the Business Unscripted podcast. We're here to share real-life insights, practical strategies, and the honest lessons that we have learned from our own mistakes because, frankly, we have been in your shoes. So whether you need help with operations, accountability, financial knowledge, sales, or maybe just getting your mindset right, we are here, and this is the right spot for no-fluff conversations and tools that work. So grab your favorite cup of joe. Let's jump into the show. And let's jump into the show as that famous... well, maybe not so famous voice said on the voiceover, because of course that's me. But we're here with another Friday episode, running a couple minutes late. That's all right. In business, sometimes things come up and you have to take care of them, or sometimes things just don't go your way. And I think that was kind of the morning I'm having so far. But for those of you, right now it looks like it's just me today. So Dwarna is off doing some stuff with the wifey. Let me just kind of having some issues on the Facebook page. So we'll go ahead and just add that back to the business page here. And we'll go ahead and get started. So today, we talked about last week, we wanted to talk about agreements and expectations with your clients, how important that is. What are some of the things that you should be, kind of focusing on in your agreement? Also, some other things we're going to chat about today. Messaging was a good one that, kind of came up again this week with a lot of conversations I was having. Also, outreach, warm network. So I had a great conversation with a gentleman yesterday who was thinking of getting into a new line of business, right? And he didn't know where to get started. So we'll talk about that a little bit as well. And then also, AI. AI, I think, is something that's never going to go away. So I think we're always going to talk about it on this show. And so we'll talk a little bit about that towards the end, on things that, what do they not tell you about AI and what do you need to consider, but what can go well when you do it right. So with that, grab your favorite cup of joe and well, I got water today because our coffee machine here in the office just took a shit. So as I said, the morning is not going my way, but I'm here and I am happy to be live with you all. We do this podcast every single week, every Friday morning at 8:15 a.m., 8:30 a.m., more likely 8:30 a.m. And the goal here is, if you're a business owner, or you're an aspiring business owner, we want to give you advice from things that we've struggled with in our business, but also things that we have helped our clients with. Sure, challenges or obstacles that they've overcome. And how you can do the same things by learning from our experiences so that you don't have to make those same mistakes. So you're in the right spot. Also, we're on a mission with Triumph Business Solutions to help and grow 1,000 business owners. And maybe that's you if you're watching this. I hope it's you. So if that's you, feel free to just watch, share, do all that fun stuff. But more importantly, just pay attention and take something, one or two things out of every episode that you can take away for the next week and begin to implement and focus on in your business, in your journey. And that's one thing I say to a lot of people. You don't have to do every single thing that you hear. Pick the things that are currently important to you, that you're focusing on, maybe that you're struggling or that you don't have, time or attention for, and focus on that area. You don't have to try to do everything at once. Otherwise, you're never going to get anything done. I'm coming to the realization that I used to think I'm great at multitasking. I'm sure you've probably said that to a lot of people yourself. You probably told, everybody, I can do multitasking. I'm awesome at it. But really what happens is nothing ever gets done to the fullest, right? You end up, doing a lot of small things on a bunch of different projects, but nothing ever gets fully completed in terms of, it takes a lot longer to get there than if you were to just put your whole attention to it for an hour or 2 hours a day and then kind of break up your attention out. But one of the things that, for me, right, being ADHD, which I've mentioned before on here, and if you're a business owner, there's probably a great chance that you are ADHD yourself. You have a lot of thoughts throughout the day, right? And you don't know how to guard it. You just want to get started, And so one of the things that I have been beginning to do, and I know we're going to talk later on about AI as well, but we're going to talk a little bit about it here because it's really helped, is to set guardrails up for yourself. And how you can do that is in your AI, in your instructions and documents in your AI, whether it's your Claude MD or a specific file for yourself that you're using in your AI, is to set up those guardrails about what is your focus, right? And even having a recurring thing that sends you a message, what are you focusing on today? And then that becomes your guardrail for the day. And so what will happen is if you begin to talk to your Claude or your chat or Gemini, whatever you're using, it uses that as a reference. So if you start to ask it or start to point it in another direction towards another idea that's not in your guardrail, it's going to push back on you, right? And so it's going to tell you, hey, like this isn't in your attention span, right? This isn't in your plan for the day. Are you sure you need to work on this? And then you can say, you know what, you're right. Add it to my roadmap, and give it a deadline. Say how I want to potentially work on this by the end of the week. And then it will help you remember that by putting it in your memory file and then bringing it up to your attention the next time you say, what should we be focusing on today? So use it as a partner. This is where you begin to use AI as a partner by putting those guardrails in and instead of just going to AI and giving it everything and trying to work on everything at once, start putting those guardrails into your business, into your instruction set, so that you yourself can focus on 2 or 3 things at a time during the day instead of trying to get everything done. So that's my ADHD moment for y'all today. So jumping in, first topic main topic we want to talk about is agreements and contracts and why it's so important. Because I've had a lot of conversations with owners who have stated that they don't want their clients to be locked into a contract or be locked into an agreement for any period of time, because I hate it. You probably hate it as well, being locked into any sort of term when you're working with anybody. And there's a difference between locking somebody in and having a document that both parties have an understanding of what the expectation is of that relationship, right? And so that's why it's so important, even if you are a month-to-month, organization and you're doing some sort of personal service where, you're providing some sort of level of support and they're supposed to give you, support or documents or access, in return. You have to have these agreements so that both parties have an understanding of what the expectation is. Same thing with payment. I've talked to a lot of people that, end up having, 2, 3, 4 months of arrears of invoices. And I was that way at the beginning because I just felt like if I just keep working with this person, they'll end up paying me. I'm not going to keep doing this for free. And it ends up kind of biting you in the ass. I mean, you probably feel that way. You can probably think back in your past, and there's probably 2 or 3 clients that have done that to you, right? So this is why it's so important for an agreement in order to, kind of put those things forward. So what do you do, or what are the main things that you should have in your agreement? And again, this isn't legal advice. I highly suggest that whatever draft you come up with, always, take it to an attorney, a business attorney or business, lawyer, and have them do it, give it a review. But go into the process not thinking, oh, I have to get one up on my prospect or my client. Agreements should not be one side feels like they won and the other side feels like they lost by signing it and authorizing that agreement, right? They're a partnership kind of understanding of that business relationship that you're making with them. So ultimately, make it feel just that way, So if you're asking for responsibilities, right, and duties of them as a client, right? So for example, maybe they have to give you documents by a certain date. They have to give you access to certain platforms or certain programs that they're using that you rely on in order to do your work, vice versa. Explain, what are you going to do when given that access? What are your responsibilities as the owner, as the business that's giving, right, that service to them? And by doing that, both parties, when reviewing it, can have a clear understanding of what their expectations are. And if you need a deadline, so I always use bookkeeping and accounting as an example because it's something that I'm familiar with. If you want to be giving your financial statements to your clients by the 10th or the 15th of the following month, well, that's going to be highly reliant on you getting your documents from your client in a timely manner. So you have to put that in there. You can't put I guarantee or I state that I'm going to give you, your financial statements by the 15th, but if they haven't given you their bank statements or their credit card statements or their loan statements by the 15th, you can't obviously create a financial statement by the same day. So there has to be some sort of understanding on their part that says you're going to give me, X, Y, and Z documents, and the deadline for these is the 4th or the 5th or whatever it is that's appropriate to your situation. Because what you state in there is that if I don't get these by this date, it could affect the timeline of you receiving your documents, right? That's why it's important to have client responsibilities and expectations, and then your responsibilities and expectations to the client. Also, what are your objectives? What are your outcomes that you're promising or that you state that, if all of those things are occurred and they're implementing all the stuff that you are suggesting or that you're giving back to them, that they will see? Put that in there. Don't be afraid, because you should be confident enough with the service that you're providing to give those guarantees based on the information and the work that you've done with other people who's implemented the same things. That's all you're basically stating to them is that, hey, if you take this, project or you take this workflow I'm giving you, it's literally going to save you 4 hours a week. Because it's what you stated, but two, on the average of everybody else that has implemented that workflow, what they've been able to save a week, right? Or you're going to be able to do X, Y, and Z more, outreach because, well, you weren't doing outreach before, and now you're able to do some of that, right? And so that's why it's really important to put all of those objectives in there and those outcomes as well, because the client now feels what they're going to get, right? They see that end state, which keeps them engaged. Now, the next one for you as the business owner is that invoicing piece, right? What is and when is the expected payment due date by? Okay. Is it the 4th? Is it the 5th? Is it every 30 days after their initial payment, right? On whatever that date is. Okay. So that's part one, right? What is the due date? How much is the payment? Excuse me, I don't have coffee this morning, so I got to drink my water. My fiance will be happy with me though. So payment due date and amount is number one. But the part that a lot of people overlook is what happens if they don't pay? And it's surprising to me how many people don't have a late fee in their agreements. And so what late fees do is one, okay, it stops them more than likely. People don't want to pay late fees. You don't want to pay late fees. I don't want to pay late fees. So if it's significant enough, it stops them from voluntarily deciding not to pay you. Correct? So think about it. If they're a business owner and you're a business owner, if you had a choice of bills to pay that were coming up all due, and a couple of them had late fees or, maybe cancellations of services, and they were left with those versus your invoice, who doesn't have a late fee, and they pretty much are confirmed that you're probably going to continue to work with them, which bills do you think are going to get paid? Probably Group A, because they don't want to pay the late fees, and they know they're not going to lose service with you. Or they know they're not going to be charged extra, at least, when they do pay the bill. So this is why it's so important to include a late fee. And so depending on the volume, right, depending on the invoice amount, is going to determine what sort of late fee is impactful. Typically, a good one to start with is like $25 or 5% of the invoice, whichever is greater. And the beauty of that, right, is 5% of the invoice. Great. If you don't want to pay me, okay. But if they take another 30 days to pay you, you're now at least getting interest on the money, which is pretty much equal to what you, nowadays in banking, it's way more than you would have got by having that money in the bank. So it penalizes them for choosing to, go through and pay you late, but it also ensures that you are not going to be used as their bank. So start with $25 or 5%, whichever is greater, but it's going to depend on one, your invoicing amount, but two, also, what is that relationship with your clients to determine what's more appropriate for your situation. So late fees are important. And then the second part of that part is, are you going to cancel service? Right? So give them a grace period. Typically, I say 10 days is a good grace period. 7 to 10 days is a grace period to pay the invoice. And then make sure you're following up. right? So if the invoice is due, make sure you have either an automated process or you have somebody from your team, send an invoice 3 days later. Hey, by the way, we noticed your invoice wasn't paid yet. It was due 3 days ago. Here's a link to the invoice. But give that grace period. And then at the end of that grace period, what happens? Are they, no more meetings can be scheduled with you? Do they not have access to your platform anymore, your service? Are you going to, if you're a landscaper or remodeler, like you're going to stop work until the next milestone payment's paid? Whatever that is, it needs to be in the agreement. Because if not, why would they not pay you? Or why would they pay you if you're not going to penalize them by stop doing the work that's in the agreement? And when you clearly put it in there and they sign it, they're agreeing that they read that. Because if you stop work and it's not in the agreement, even if they didn't make payment yet, they could make the argument that, well, I was under the understanding that, they would still do the work and then I could just catch up by the end of the agreement. Or, I could catch up next month, but it doesn't say anywhere that they were going to stop doing work with me. Because what happens then is now you're getting screwed because you may get penalized by not getting what they owed you or not getting the full amount because you're still going to have to do the work. So clearly put in your agreements what happens if they missed the grace period. What happens after that? Do they get suspended? Does their service get terminated? What does that look like? And then from there, you have all your legal, stuff that you want to have in your agreement. But those are the main items that I suggest that a lot of people look at that they just don't have. That's going to help protect you, right, during, your engagement with your clients. Obviously, there's other things like, make sure there's a termination clause or make sure there's a, renewing clause. And all of those are going to be dependent on what your situation is. But obviously termination, can both sides terminate with a 30-day notice? Is it a 60-day notice? All of that needs to be in there as well. And, your privacy, right, is if you're creating something for somebody, I guess this is another good one, especially if you're starting, with nowadays, there's a lot of, come up with new programs or services or dashboards or things that you're providing as part of your service to your clients. So it's really important that as part of your agreement, it clearly states in there whose data is it, right? Or whose dashboard is it that you're providing to them as part of the service? Because what you don't want to do is you don't want to have to lose that, right? If they're not going to pay you. But if it's not clearly stated that it's your property, then essentially they could make the argument that, hey, you created this for us. We want access to it forever. And then you have to now give up what you created and give them access to it, or give them the code or whatever it ends up being for them to have access to it. Also, if you're creating some sort of custom program that is for ultimately the client's use, make sure it's clearly in there. When does it become theirs, right? Is it intermittent? So whatever you built up to a certain point is theirs, or does it not become theirs until it's completely paid for and done? Because that's also an important factor. So when does that ownership change for something that you are creating for somebody? All of that's important as well. And then there's also a ton of other legal advice, right, that I would, I'm not an attorney, I'm not a, legal person. So go ahead and, I would say definitely consult your attorney of record. So, how you doing, sir? Is it Booho 08? I don't know. Thanks for watching, brother or gal. Appreciate it. Yeah. So those are the main areas of an agreement. I mean, not all main areas, but the big sort of suggestions that I make to a lot of people that don't have. So go and review your agreement, and you'll probably, maybe there's one or two of these things that you're missing that you need to go back and add, or at least consider how you can buff up what the language is. And the beauty of it is that, again, it's mutual. The benefit of an agreement is it's not locking somebody in. Like, you can have the term, right? Like, you can state that the agreement is in place for a year or 6 months, whatever that may be, but it can easily, in the termination clause, state that with a 30-day notice, your client can get out with no penalty. So you're not locking somebody in at that point. All you're saying is that this agreement, this initial agreement, is in place for the term of 12 months. But then in your term termination clause, you can state what that looks like, whether it's 30 days, 60 days, immediate, whatever. And then additionally, you can have the renewal clause. So if they don't give you a 30-day notice towards the end of the agreement, it automatically renews for another 12 months, which then reinitiates the 30-day clause again, right? So, and the other one I would say in the pricing with the renewal is, what are you going to increase your price? You have to make sure that there's some sort of escalation, whether it's just wording or maybe it's an agreed upon sort of, already rate adjustment every year that you've already agreed upon. If it's a multi-year agreement, that you put in that agreement so that it's already signed, authorized, and as soon as that date hits, you can raise the price. If you're not comfortable with that, or let's say you just want to do like you just want to do a 12-month, but you want it to renew, but you want to have the ability to increase your price. Well, then you can simply write in your renewal clause that says, if 30-day notice is not given, agreement will be renewed automatically for another 12-month term up to 2 years. And then we reserve the right to increase prices every year up to a 15% increase, or whatever you feel is comfortable for your business. But the beauty of this is that you don't necessarily have to always increase it to 15%. And I think it was Dwarren shared this with me, where he had that in the agreement, and he raised prices 10%. And then the client reached out to him and said, "Hey, just wondering why did prices go up 10%? I'm not happy with that." And Dwarren simply, if you remember when we signed this agreement, we actually could have raised it 15%, but we didn't need to, so we only raised it 10. And then the client was like, "Oh yeah, you're right. Okay, cool, thanks." And then just left it at that, because ultimately it's still a savings, right, to your client. You could have gone more, but you didn't need to. You're only raising your prices to keep your margin where it needs to be. You're not trying to gouge their pricing every single time. And as long as you're giving the value, the client should feel like it's a win. So if you have any questions about agreements, about expectations, anything like that, or in business in general, feel free. Always make sure to drop your questions down below, whether it's live or you're watching the recording. Share it down below. We'll answer those, whether it's live or whether we're watching afterwards, and we're responding in the comments, or we bring it up on the next episode. And the second piece to this is expectations, right? So agreements are good because it locks in what both parties are going to be responsible for. But setting those expectations up front is vital to a good relationship with a client. And so especially if it's more of a personal side, right? Personal relationship that you're going to be working on with your client. What I would say is, you want to, in that first 1 or 2 sessions, talk about what is the expectations from you, what's the expectations from them, how are your sessions going to go, what's the input and the feedback loop look like? Because by doing that, if it will happen, they push back on you, you can say, well, if you remember, we kind of went over this, we have our expectations guide that we went over in our first session that you kind of signed off on, and you agreed to that these are the expectations for both of us. What's changed? Why do you feel like you want to veer off? And again, it opens up the conversation for you to either pull them back to where they need to be, or if there's a legitimate reason why they need to change the expectation, you can make that determination as the business owner working with them to provide the output, if that makes sense or not. Okay. And so, this comes around meeting, for me, being on the advisory side, there's a lot of times where I'm having conversations with people and I have to just cut them off. And I'm like, hey, like, I get it. Like, you're going down this path, but we want to make the most of our time. Like, let's come back to the task at hand. We can come back to that, but we're way down a rabbit hole right now. And I tell people in our first couple sessions that I'm going to do this often. Don't take it personally. It's only to maximize your time, to maximize my time, and to make sure that you're doing what you need to do in order to, be successful. And so when you do that, when you like 3 sessions later have to cut them off, just slightly remind them, right? Hey, remember, we just want to stay on path, right? We want to stay on track with your goals, and we want to make the most of our hour that we have together, or our 2 hours, whatever it ends up being, whatever you're doing with them. Because if you're like me, you could probably go off on tangents forever, right? And you probably have a lot of clients that will do that as well. And so this is why it's really important to set that expectation up front, set the idea that, hey, this might happen, be aware of it. I'm not doing it because I'm an asshole. I'm doing it because I want to keep us on track. I'm doing it because I want to keep you focused as well, because there may be times where I have to give you hard feedback. Maybe you're focusing your attention elsewhere, and you need to bring it back in. Maybe you're trying to do too much, right? You're shiny object syndrome, and you're trying to go through every different path and trying to get so many different things accomplished. And what you end up realizing is that, hey, you're getting pulled away from your main mission, and we need to pull you back. And sometimes it's a slap in the face. I don't like doing it, but I have to sometimes, because I need to get slapped in the face sometimes too. It just happens. Life is quick. Life goes forward, whether we like it or not. So I hope that answers, high level agreements, expectations, and why it's important for you. So if you don't have an agreement, you were in that park or in that group of, well, I didn't want to lock people in. I don't want them to feel like they're locked into an agreement or to a contract. Just make sure it's worded and go over it with them. Clearly mention to them how, hey, this isn't locking you in. It's just an understanding on both sides of what I expect of you, what you should expect of me, what our outcomes are, what our timelines are, and how we're going to get there. And then obviously some legal stuff for both sides. And so last thing with that, just remember, it's a mutual agreement. It's not one-sided. So if you're putting it together and you're like, I got to put all these things to benefit me, just put yourself in that client's shoes. How are they going to feel when they see that? Is it going to feel like you're building a partnership, or is it going to feel like you're just CYA trying to cover your own ass? And if that's the case, you might want to revisit. So if you have any questions on that, drop them down below. But I want to take a moment and just talk a minute to you. There's a lot of good things that are going on in Triumph Business Solutions world, right? And the idea that when I talk to people, our focus isn't to shove a solution down your throat. Our focus is to, one, determine where you're at. What are you trying to achieve right now? And sometimes that's not going to be with us. And that's okay. But I want to point you in the right direction. So if you're in business right now, or maybe you're aspiring to be in business and you just don't know how to get started, reach out, drop a message down below, go to our website or any one of our profiles, wherever you're watching this, and, shoot me a message. I'm more than happy to point you in the right direction, because most of the time it might not be us. It's probably not going to be us that is the right solution for you right now. But when it is the right time for you now, because there's a problem that you're looking to overcome, we hope we are the choice that you decide to come back to, because of that relationship that we built and the support that we've given you along the way. And so we got a lot of good, fun, awesome things going on, right, with Triumph Business Solutions. On our financial team are helping, kind of do the day-to-day bookkeeping, which is, vital and important, creating the financial statements and everything. But where I'm more passionate about right now is combining that with some of the cool things that we can do on the workflow side. So how can you get more hours back in your day, become more efficient through the processes that you're doing on a daily basis? But what are some of the things that you wish you could be doing that you just don't have time to do right now? Especially if you're a small business owner, maybe 1 or 2, 3 employees, there's hours that could be given back to you every single week and allow you to do more. And if you just don't know how to get started, that's what we're doing right now. So if you want hours back in your day, or if you're looking to, maybe even add hours right to the same day, and you're like, well, how can I do that, Dave? Well, there's processes, there's things that you could be doing, while you're also working, that are going to make you feel like you're 2 or 3 people. So if that's you and you're like, I'm up for that, shoot me a message down below. Go visit, triumphbusinesssolutions.pro. We got a lot of cool things going on. We're about to kick off our AI studio, which is a community around AI development skills, different live Q&A support. So if that's you, you can go there to cowork.triumphbusinesssolutions.pro. You can sign up there, learn a little bit more about what the community looks like, and I look forward to seeing you in there. So just a short little, little ad by me. All right. So a couple other topics we want to talk about. So one is messaging, because it came up yesterday in our alliance meeting. And then also an example of getting into a new service, new product, using your warm network. How does that look like? And then also, what does AI not tell you? So some of the things that I've been learning by doing this so often. So some, 4 or 5 things that you probably haven't been told about AI that I'm going to tell you. But I do want to start with kind of an idea around messaging. So I was at our alliance event. So if you don't know, Alignable, I'm our local alliance, sort of ambassador. So I lead in-person networking events for business owners. And yesterday we were doing a roundtable and, kind of discussion during our session. And one of the business owners brought up that they're struggling because, and I'm not going to use the exact dollar amounts here, but the premise is the same. They have a minimum funding requirement for their jobs. They're in the remodeling business. And they don't want to work with anybody because they're higher end, and they don't want to work with anybody that is below that threshold, but they couldn't understand how to get the messaging across so that they stop getting people that are way under that level, and it's wasting their time. Okay. And then they followed it up with, but I don't want people to feel like they can't afford our services. And I was like, ding, 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 right there. Right there. You just pointed out why you're having trouble. You have 2 conflicting beliefs going on in your head about your business that they don't agree. Either you want people to feel like they can afford you no matter what their budget is, or you want the budget to have a minimum value to work with you. So which one is it? You have to decide on that one. I can't decide it for you. Nobody else in this room can decide it for you. Once you decide that, now your messaging changes. And it makes it so much easier for you. You have to be comfortable in that point that there's going to be people that you're going to say no to, or that are just going to be qualified out. And so when it comes to, creating that message, creating your copy, creating, the story around your brand, you listening to this, how you can learn from this is decide, like, you may be struggling with that. You may be like, oh, I want people that are, $500,000 or more. But then at the same point, you're like, well, I want to help every business owner because I want them to be successful. That doesn't work that way. It's, hey, you're under 500 grand right now. I wish I could work with you. I'm only working with people that are over 500,000. However, here's some free resources, right? Here's some things to, kind of point you in the right direction, to set you off on the right foot. And even better, have a trusted individual who is working with that range of revenue right now. Hey, I'm not working with 500,000, but I do have a trusted, partner that they're perfect for you. And I've sent a couple other people there. They've done well. And then once they hit the 500,000, now they come work with me. So if that's you, hey, here's their name. Here's their number. And the beauty of that is, with your partner, have some sort of reciprocal agreement going on, right? In terms of like an affiliate or a referral where, hey, I'm going to send you, people who are under my budget. Just give me 5-10% of whatever they give you for the first year. And then if they move from you to me, I'll do the same thing for you. And it should, depending on the pricing, right? Especially as they're getting bigger, their return affiliate should be larger than the affiliate they gave you, because your probably investment in your service is higher than their investment in their service from the client side. So if you can form partnerships like that, now you can really put your attention on where you want to be instead of trying to service everybody. And so I hope that you can take that away and see that important message in that situation yesterday. You cannot have two conflicting beliefs in your mind about your business and then wonder why you can't get one belief to win over the other. So if that's you, if you have that two conflicting beliefs right now going on in your head, and it's like, I only want to work with $1 million plus or $10 million plus, but yet when somebody who's $1 million, you make the exception and bring them in because you want everybody to feel like they can work with you, that's a problem. That's why you can't only get $10 million plus, because you're making the exceptions for all these other rules, because you also have that belief in your head. But, well, I want to help everybody. I want to service everybody. I remember what we said prior times before. You can't service everybody as a business owner. You can't, which is why you need to niche. And revenue size, budget size is a niche. You got to do it. So walk away, think about that. Are you having two conflicting beliefs going on in your head that is stopping you from being successful around your messaging and being able to tell the right story about your business? Probably are. I did for a long time. Now, I mean, I can probably have a little bit of that now, depending on what business line we're talking about. So it's really eye-opening. We're like, hey, ding, 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 right there. So thought I'd share that. The next one I want to talk about was, let's jump into the AI thing, and then if we have time at the end, because I know you guys don't want to just sit here and listen to me for an hour. But so what are some of the things that you're probably hearing a lot of people suggest if you're not jumping into the AI game, that you need to do it, that it's going to help all your needs, it's going to solve everything, it's going to make you so efficient, all these things, right? It's the best thing since sliced bread. Now, while I feel like it's pretty impactful, right? It's shifted my everyday productivity a lot. But what I've come to learn is that my productivity is a lot different than your productivity. So what I never tell people is that, yeah, it's going to solve 99% of your problems. And if anybody says it's going to solve all your business problems, they're lying to you. Okay. If you implement AI in a business that has broken systems, you're just going to compound the broken systems. So some of the first things that need to be focused on are how do I use AI to help me fix the broken system? And if you're just trying to layer it on top to automate or to do, things more efficiently around your broken system, it's just going to compound it, and it's going to make it even, more visibly inefficient, and people are going to struggle, and you're probably actually going to see a decline in efficiency and productivity because you didn't take the time to fix the system. So if that's number one. So if what a lot of people like to say is that AI is going to solve all your problems. That's not true. So I tell people a lot, it's not going to solve all your problems, but it's going to help you do things a little bit more efficient to start. And then as you continue to grow and you continue to learn and do more and more and more, it will help you solve some things in your business. Number two, a lot of people are not going to, they're going to tell you that you can do everything all at once. You can do this and this and this. And there's a million videos that are being uploaded. There's a million processes, a lot of different things that are happening in AI constantly, right? Don't think like you have to do it all. Nobody's going to tell you that. You don't have to do every single thing that you see in a video that comes out about what AI is doing. You have to analyze things and determine, is this important for me, or is this something I should come back to later? And a great strategy for that, because this happens to me all the time, obviously my algorithms are, AI creators and stuff like that, is a couple things that I say is find 2 or 3 people that you enjoy, right? That are putting out content that you enjoy, that you can follow and pay attention to them. And even in that realm, there's going to be things that they're talking about that have nothing to do with you, or that is not relevant to you right now. Great. Put it on the back burner, make a notebook LM, copy the link to the video, drop it in a notebook LM for your, for that creator, for references to videos that you want to come back to later, right? but not everything is going to be relevant to you in AI, in a video, or anything like that. There's so many things happening all the time. You can't keep up with it as a business owner, and that's fine. Think about it. If you try to keep up with every single thing going on in the news, you would be overwhelmed. We would never get anywhere. If you try to implement any new software, any new program that comes out, you would never get anywhere. And it's the same thing with AI. Just figure out what's relevant to what you're working on right now, and then work with that. Get that working. Make it efficient. And then you could possibly add on some additional layers and different things like that. So that's why it's so important, right? So important to not feel like if you're just getting started that you're behind. You have to feel that you're going to get started. Step one, like everybody walks, right? They take their first steps before they start running. That's all you got to do. Same thing with AI. It was an interesting fact. I'm actually going to confirm it here while we're live. But it was a conversation I had yesterday, and the number he mentioned was kind of shocking to me, and I just wanted to confirm. But it was the number of percent of business owners that have like adopted some sort of AI in their business, right? Small business owners. And so I'm just looking this up here. So companies that have 50 or more have the highest adoption rate of some sort of AI in their business of like 48%. While smaller business owners, like probably you and I, if you're watching this, are, single digit employees, like 1, 2, up to 10. Those are lower, somewhere around 20% or lower of single owner businesses who have adopted some sort of AI. So think about that. You think you're behind the 8 ball. You think that you're not going to be able to catch up. You're not going to be able, right, to do all this stuff. When in reality, you're part of the 80%. You're part of the majority that hasn't. So if you can just get started, you're already going to put yourself ahead of that game. So don't feel like you're so far behind that you can't get started. Otherwise, you're never going to get started, and then you're always going to be behind. Just get started today, right? The other thing that nobody's going to tell you, and this is even coming from like, onboarding sucks with an AI platform. I'm going to tell you that. Claude, while it's wonderful, it's great. There's no great, hey, by the way, like here's the first thing you need to do when you set up Claude is set up your Claude MD file, right? Here's how you set up your About Me file. Here's how you set up your memory file. There's nothing like that where they tell you how to set this up locally on your computer to make it more efficient for you, right? And so that's across the board, ChatGPT or Gemini, like they have the About Me's, but there's no clear walkthrough lineation of how to do all this first. They just want you to jump in. And what's the first thing they tell you to do in most of these? Hey, jump in. Hey, why don't you make an image of, a waterfall going over a cat or something, not how to make it efficient on the business owner side. Just think of that. So what you need to do when you go to get started is actually research how do you set it up appropriately. Don't go to like Claude and say, how do I set you up appropriately? Because sometimes they're not even going to know, because even the most recent things are still only taught like three months behind. So any new thing that comes out, and I've experienced this so often where Anthropic will release a new tool or a new, piece of software, and their current model won't even know that it's there until you tell it, hey, go to the internet and search this, and then research it and educate yourself on it and bring it back to me. If you just ask the model without giving it an instruction to go search it, it's going to be like, I don't even know what that is. What are you talking about? Anthropic, what was the one? Agents, because I do a lot of stuff in the CLI. I released a video the other day about I spent about an hour wasting time trying to figure out how to use it because it's in beta. And initially I went to, Claude, and I didn't tell it to go search, and I didn't give it the link of the release notes. I just said, what's the best way to use agents? And it came back to me and said, or agent view. And it came back and said, well, you use agent view, or you use agents when you're developing code, and you can, send multiple agents out to do different pieces of the code. And I'm like, that's not what I'm talking about. And so it didn't even know that it released it 2 days earlier until I gave it the link to the release notes. And then it was able to go to that link and actually learn about it and then say, oh yeah, so based on the release notes, here's what you're going to do. So what the point of that is that even the most relevant models are not going to tell you what's the best way to set it up today. It's going to be dated. So what you need to do is figure out who's your trusted resources, who's your trusted, sort of partners that are going to give you the instructions of, hey, here's how you set it up appropriately. And here's how you kind of direct your system back to those files every single time, so that it's most beneficial for you, the business owner. Because the most frustrating thing that I have gone through over the last 3 months, years, right? I've been on ChatGPT since it came out, has been having to retell it something that I've told it multiple times, right? Hey, I don't do that program anymore. Why are you still referencing that program? It's because until recently, there wasn't never really a good memory system, a good memory file for storing that and always having every chat go back to that. So for example, in Claude, the best way to do that is to always, in every one of your chats, link your main Claude document file that has your Claude MD, your memory file, your About Me file. Because then every single time a new chat goes into that and you start a new chat or you start a new cowork assessment, it's going to read that information first. And your Claude MD, some advice for you on that, keep it under 200 lines. Your Claude MD should really just be a routing system. Hey, if I'm talking to you about video creation, it's got a link to the video creation file. Because what we don't want to do is have that Claude MD file be 1,000, 2,000 lines, and then every single session you're already starting it with your context level pretty high, right? Because we do have limited context that it actually remembers in any specific session. So you want to make it slim and just make it a router to the next files that it needs to. And then what I say is that typically that first 2 or 3 levels of documents are all kind of routing to the final destination based on the specificity of the question or the prompt that you're giving it. Because then once you get there, now you can build out all the detail because now it's specific about what you're asking it. That's where you want the context to lay. So that's just a high level overview of, Claude MD, memory files, all that fun stuff that is important. So, but nobody tells you that. Even the programs, the platforms themselves, they don't give you a good onboarding on that side. The second one is, you probably don't know skills, right? Everything now that you do should be turned into a skill. And the beauty of skills is that skills can go from ChatGPT to Gemini to Claude. They're all the same. And you can integrate them into all your platforms. So, if you made a Claude skill, well, Gemini and, ChatGPT now have that ability to use those skills. So you can integrate them in there. So part of, I mentioned our studio, our AI studio, the skills that we're creating that are templated are able to be used in any one of those 3 platforms or all 3 at the same time. The idea is that you can now take what you do on a regular basis, turn it into a skill that's repeatable, and be able to, stop telling it what to do every time. But the part they won't tell you is that sometimes those will break. It's going to be frustrating as hell. You may think you got a skill. It happens at least, I don't know, once or twice a week, where a skill that's worked in the past doesn't work anymore. It's like, well, what's going on? It's because things change, like, especially if you're doing a cowork, kind of process. A software, a platform might change their backend code, which requires, you to, kind of update the steps that need to be taken in the skill in order to perform that action. And what I've also found is that, with cowork and then learning and getting more into Claude Code, cowork is just a layer on top of code. So don't be intimidated by code or codex, whatever it ends up being, whichever one you're using, because once you understand you can just use simple language in code to prompt. A lot of the stuff that you're doing in cowork, like that doesn't require any sort of like automation piece, can be set up as a system in code to be more efficient. Because code can use different things in your software on your computer that cowork might struggle with in terms of like running a terminal and running commands, different things like that. And so what I've started to shift to do as well is to move a lot of those non-automated pieces that I was just doing in cowork out and creating more tools in code that can do all those things for us. So being comfortable playing around in code, in a CLI too, I suggest CLI, get used to that. I didn't know what a CLI was 4 months ago, and now I've got, a ton of them up and running all at the same time. And so it's just about being willing to trial and error. And that's in business, that's in life in general, being willing to trial and error. But I also understand that you may not have time to do it. It may not even be your passion. You may want to adopt a lot of this stuff, but you just don't have time. You want to focus on your business. That's why you're in it, right? You love doing that sort of thing, but you just want to be a little bit more efficient, get a little bit more outreach, find a little bit more leads, right? That's why you can find people like us or like anybody else that you trust to support you along that journey. Find somebody that you trust that's going to help and support you and answer your questions, point you in the right direction. And as long as they don't tell you that they are the number one expert in AI and they will always know everything about AI, you should feel comfortable with them. Anybody who tells you they are the number one expert in AI and that they know everything about AI and they're going to solve all your problems, run the opposite way now, because things change so quickly. Nobody is the expert in AI. You can be pretty knowledgeable in AI, but nobody's the expert in AI. Like, nobody's going to be all knowing. There's going to be a lot of figuring out, and working through a lot of things that are changing in order to make it work for you, the business owner. And that's okay. You want somebody else to do that. That's why you're partnering with them. So you trust them. You make sure that they are going to be able to support you and that they're going to be there by your side. That's all you've got to be looking for. As well as the outcome, make sure it supports what you're trying to achieve. So, but when you do it right, when you do AI right, it saves you time and it actually makes you feel like you're 2, 3, 4 people because you're able to do a lot more with the minimal time that you have. Because you and I, we all have the same 24 hours in a day, right? I don't have 2 extra hours. Man, I wish I did. That would be so awesome. But I don't have 2 extra hours in my day than you. We all have the same hours. It's just, how do you make yourself more efficient? And if you're saying, yeah, but Dave, it's not authentic, it's not real, really? You're right. It wouldn't be authentic and it wouldn't be real if you didn't give it your voice, your instructions, what you wanted to talk about, what your experience is. You're right. It wouldn't be authentic. But then the same pushback I say is, well, then why are you hiring a marketing person? Because they're not your voice. They're not you. They don't have your experience, but they're talking about your business like you. So which one is more you? Which one's more authentic? The AI that you trained, that you gave it your experiences, you told it how you wanted to answer things, or the marketing salesperson that's answering things on your behalf that you can't necessarily always control what they say or what they do? Which one's more you? Which one's... And again, I'm not saying marketing and salespeople are bad, but if you're okay hiring other people to represent your business and post things on the business behalf or create marketing materials on your behalf, which you need to do as a CEO of a business, you can't do everything forever, right? You can't tell me that, well, I just want to be authentic. I want it to be me. I want everything to be, me handwritten or me creating the copy. You can't tell me that when you're trying to grow and scale a business, because you're never going to be able to do that forever. But yet you're going to tell me that, oh yeah, my assistant writes my emails, or, I'm okay like with them writing everything and sending out stuff or creating copy for my social media. That's not you. That's not authentic, is it? No. So why not an AI to do it? And it can save you some money, especially as you're growing. Like, when you get to a point, great, you've created the AI, hire somebody on to now manage that for you, because you still got to do managing of your AI and your softwares. And as I just said, things are going to break. You're going to have to do some sort of oversight to make sure that things are going the right way, or make shifts. I make shifts to our processes weekly, but right now it's still all on me to do that. When I get to the next level, I'm going to be hiring somebody to do that for me. Hey, I've trained the AI systems. Now you guys need to manage this to help you do your job better while we're continuing to grow. See, this is where AI becomes a partner, a tool, not I'm just going to set it and forget it. That's the difference. So if you're so resistant because you're like, I don't want to do it because I need to be authentic, you're literally fooling yourself, and that's it. That's it. You know, AI, it's the 10-80-10 rule, right? You give it the idea, let them, like the AI, do 80% of the work, and then you do the last 10% of the check and the follow-up and the feedback. That's how you become more efficient in your business with AI. And when you do it right, it saves you time, gives you more time back in your day to either do more of the things that matter for your business, but you also can do the things that you haven't even had the time to do yet because you've been so busy doing all that mundane stuff. And if you're sick of the mundane stuff, like most people are, stop being resistant. Well, there was one other thing I wanted to talk about. I'm at right about an hour. And if you're here, if you've listened to my voice for so long, more power to you. Especially live, because it's not 2x. If you're like me, I like to watch everything 2x. But I appreciate everybody that's here. High level, what the conversation piece was, and maybe I can dive a little bit more into it, next week with Worden, because I think it'll be a good topic. But, there's a gentleman I had a conversation with yesterday, really kicked it off. And he had mentioned, because he wants to get more into the advising space, into what he's been doing. And he had a question of like, how does he just get started? How does he get those first 2 to 3 clients or, members to join his new advisory? And that can be the same for you. But in his case, it was even better because he already had in their other business, and their agency, like 350 people that are clients that already knew him, that's already doing some sort of business with him and has some sort of name recognition. So those are 350 warm, already paying clients that he could potentially reach out to market his new advisory. And so the advice that I gave, and I'm going to share it with you here as well, is that one, know who you want to work with, right? So you have your ICP, your ideal client profile of this new service, this new program. Identify in your warm network who fits that, right? Who's part of that, those clients that fit that ICP. And maybe it's 60. But if you only need 2 or 3 to sign up, that's perfect. You only need what? 3 to 5%. It's a good close rate. And then develop a campaign of awareness to reach out to those 60, for example. And how you want to do this is 5 emails, 6 emails, however you want to do it. But you generate the curiosity first. So understand, what is that problem that you're going to be solving with your new advisory? What's that outcome that you're going to be providing? And then you tease it in a storytelling sort of format in the first couple of messages that you send in an email. Hey, by the way, it's John with XYZ agency. I noticed that you're in, let's just say you're in this home services industry. We've noticed in a lot of our research and working with a lot of people that typically there's 3 problems that individuals in your industry face, right? And you list out those 3 problems. Is by chance, is just anything that you're facing right now in your business. And that's it, right? There's no saying, hey, I got a new program. There's no saying I'm going to, sell you up. It's generating that curiosity, and you're giving them real pains that they may be facing in their business. And we talked about it. Once you identify their pain and they have a problem, now you can be able to talk about potentially a solution. But you can't do that if you don't know that they have a problem. And so this is going to generate that interest. Hey, just let us know. Reply to this email. Then you can follow that up in 2-3 days. John, it's Dave over here, XYZ agency. I know in my last email I mentioned some 3 pain points. We happen to put together this quick sort of guide to help owners in the home services industry overcome those pains. I wanted to send it over to you real quick. Boom. Attach it to the email, send it over. Hey, if you want to kind of chat about this or have any questions on it, you can reply to me here, or below is a link. Feel free to schedule a quick 15-minute call. And now you're already solving their problem without having to ever have a conversation with them or them even requesting you, right, too. But you're providing that extra value. You're providing that free resource directly to your ICP. And then the third email is a quick follow-up. Hey, we sent over the pains, and then we sent over, a quick kind of guide. You're probably busy, and if you don't have time to like dive deeper, would you be interested or would you be opposed to setting up a 20-minute conversation? I'll walk you through specifically, individually, one-on-one, the guide, and we can talk through which one of those might be applicable to your business. Does that sound like a good plan for you? If so, link down below, right? And again, you're not even telling them that you're doing advisory now. You're just saying, hey, we want to take a personal approach to helping you solve this issue. Now, this is where I get a lot of pushback from people. But Dave, aren't you just, hiding the fact that you want to sell them? No, because I don't know that person even has a problem. So why would I try to sell them? Why would I say I have something to sell them when I don't know if I do have something to sell them, because I don't know what their situation is? All you're doing in this point is that you've identified a industry, you identified pain points that you can solve. You provided a resource to answer those questions and those pain points, and you're now just volunteering your time to them to walk through that. At what point am I hiding something that I'm doing? You're not. Which then leads into the next area, which you send the request, hey, do you want to go through this one-on-one? And then, emails 4 and 5, email 4 can simply be, hey, you're probably busy. I don't want to, continue to bug you, but, here's another resource that, we also just kind of saw that was impactful to a couple other people. I wanted to share it with you. Feel free to get back to me when you get a chance. And then email 5 is, just that close up, hey, if this isn't a priority for you, I get it. We appreciate you being a client of, our other services. Feel free, you have my email address, reach out anytime when you get a chance to sit down and have a chance to digest everything. And that's it. And you never once pushed for a sale, did you? No, because you don't have to. Now, when you get them on a call, you're not pushing there either. You're providing support. You walk through the questionnaire, right? Ask them questions. Say, hey, why is this a problem right now? Why is it a priority for you to solve it right now? What other things have you tried to do to solve this? Why haven't those worked? What did work? What did you enjoy about the solutions that you've already found? What didn't work? And then at the end of that, you can say, well, could I make a suggestion, or could I point some, more feedback in the right direction? And then this is where, once they have accepted that, that's where you can say, well, because I've had so many conversations with everybody around these issues, I actually created, this sort of like advisory program to help owners like yourself overcome the issues we're talking about here. Based on what you're telling me, I had a couple different levels of it, but based on what you're telling me where you guys are at, I feel like you might fit into this level of service. And here's why. And then walk them through why. And sometimes it may just be the basic, because maybe in your conversation, you realize that they don't have a lot of cash flow right now, or they don't have a lot of time. And so maybe it's just a basic level where it's like, hey, it's a group call. It's once a month. You get access to our resources that, kind of help you. I'm going to send out, maybe weekly emails or weekly text to kind of keep you focused. But it's not one-on-one attention. And here's the investment for that. Because when you do that, when you do a menu approach, and so I tell people this all the time, you need to have you want to have 3 levels of service, but you don't have to always show the 3 levels of service to people. Keep them in mind as you're having a conversation, and then make that suggestion by what you've heard to which one fits them best, and be realistic. Because what that's going to do is it's going to prove to them that you were listening and that you cared and that you're not there just for a money grab. Because when you come to somebody and you're like, I'm developing this advisory service, I have 3 programs, I really feel like you should be like, here's my all-in price. Like, this is what I think you need to really level you up. What does that say? The person doesn't feel heard. They just told you about how they have cash flow struggles and all this other stuff, and you're trying to sell them this big old investment thing. Like, it's going to help you solve. Like, I know you don't have the funds right now, but maybe you should just get a credit card or whatever. Fuck that. Like, listen to them, because now they feel heard. Now they feel like you actually care about them. And this is the most important part. Do care about them. Those are the people that win. When you care about your clients, you will win. If all you care about is them and their monthly investment, you're going to lose. May win temporarily, but you're going to lose long term. And so they may have funding issues. Say, oh, I'm developing this new program. I got this level, and here's why I think you're here right now. You're struggling with time, right? Sounds like cash flow might be a big issue, but you want some support. You mentioned you want some support right now. I feel like level 1 is going to be really impactful for you, and here's why. We can always talk about level 2 and 3 later, like when you get kind of caught up and things get going back in the right direction, but I don't think they're the right fit for you right now. But the beauty of that is they may say, no, wait, actually, I'm ready to kind of do more. Let's talk about level 2, or let's talk about what does level 3 look like? You basically pique their curiosity by letting them know and not trying to force it down their throat. The greatest example of this was, and I know it's a sales clip and it's from a movie, but it was, man, what's his name? Shit, why can't I think of that? This is why this sucks going live. But one of the guy from the Wedding Crashers, not the big tall one, but the skinny blonde haired guy. Well, I can't think of his name, but whatever. He's in a golf store, and he's selling golf clubs. And the customer, was there, and he's like, oh, he picks up one golf club. He's like, no, this one's not for you. I don't think you're ready for that yet. And the guy goes, no, wait, what do you mean? What is that? Right? And then he tells them, right, well, this is for like people that are really kind of high level, and they're it's probably not for your skill level yet. And the guy's like, no, I want to try that one. I want to swing it. Great. Now, I get it. This is a sales approach. But in your case, when you're doing B2B and you're building that relationship, you're not picking up your highest level and saying, oh, this is my highest level. Oh, wait, you know what? That one's not for you. That's the grimy tactic. The good tactic, though, is just to pique their curiosity by saying, here's where I think you land. Right? So if you were to change that sort of clip, it would be him picking up a club, right, that, is next to a couple of the other clubs that, it's like beginner, middle, and advanced levels of golf, which I'm not anywhere near advanced or beginner, I guess you could even say that. But it's like, hey, try this one first. Everybody lands here. Based on what you're telling me, based on your experience, how often you go out, I feel like you land here. If it's somebody who goes out a couple times a month or, a couple times, a golfing season, maybe they're in the middle plane. And so that's how you kind of approach it. Now, if it's somebody who, is about to go on to PGA, maybe they're on the amateur tour, then you go right to the high level and say, hey, these are the newest ones that are out, most advanced clubs. I think you should try these. And by doing that, you're fitting the solution with the individual because you listen to them, not trying to do a grimy sales tactic like, oh, here's the highest level. Oh, you know what? That one's not for you. That's the wrong way to use curiosity, right? And you can see that sort of thing as that's the bad sales in terms of like not really trying to generate a relationship with somebody. He's trying to just sell the highest level product, get the biggest commission. In your case as a business owner, though, your goal is how do I build that trust? How do I build that relationship? And by doing that, you can listen to them and then suggest something. And then from there say, hey, once you get through this, then we can then talk about levels 2 and 3. Because based on where you're at, this is my best solution for you. So I know I went a lot deeper than I was going to do, but we're here. I love it. So if you made it this far, or you're watching a replay, or maybe you're watching a clip and you got something out of today's episode, I hope you love it. I hope you enjoy it. Take 1 or 2 things away from today, put it in place, into work, in your business. And then with that, share it. If there's somebody, probably even somebody you don't know in your network that is a business owner, that probably needs to hear 1 or 2 things. So here's my ask of you. If you do share this, and I know you will, if you've gotten something out of this, don't just click the share button and then paste it without anything going on. Share about what it was that you took away from today's episode as you share that video. Because when you do these types of things like on LinkedIn or Facebook, whatever you're doing, that's when people can actually stop and they understand it. If you just click share, most of the time, that's not going to get even picked up in the algorithm, right? But when you share your thoughts about what you took away from that and that topic or that video or that clip, whatever it was, that's when the algorithms pick it up, it generates conversation, and people are more likely to watch. So if you are going to share this video or any other video that, from any other influencer you watch, try and just share your feedback, what you took away from that piece. So that way, it gets picked up by the algorithm and it's more impactful. But I hope you have a wonderful and amazing rest of your week. We'll see, Dwarn should be back next week. But if you have any questions about anything, whether it's the agreements, messaging, anything like that, drop it down below. Shoot us an email. Down below is our email address in the comments or the description of the episode. And if you're a business owner and maybe you're interested in coming on a future episode, talking about some of the things that you're going through and getting some advice, as well as talking about what it is that you do, feel free to use the link down below and book a session. We do these live. If it's something that you're interested in and you can't make it live, we can totally record your individual session and questions and stuff like that, and play them live if we need to. So we're more than happy to be flexible with you. So don't let that be a deterrent of, signing up and getting on the show. So with that, I hope you guys have a wonderful and amazing rest of your week. Have a good weekend. Thanks for watching. And as always, we'll see you in the next one.